All right, we're hitting up against the 11, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the stream, and we'll keep it going live in just a moment. I'm gonna shut the door. If we get a couple minutes before my next guest come, I'd like to show you our Glory Studio. That's our Christian gospel radio station.
Oh, okay. Okay.
All right. Go ahead and share this video out.
It's 11:01. KLEK Elkin Jonesboro, Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. It's now time for Community Conversations, a program focusing on the people working to make the Jonesboro community a better place, while offering viewpoints from all sides of the issues. The views expressed in this program are those of the participant and not necessarily reflect the views of KLEK 102.5 FM, Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council.
KLK 102.5 FM. Good morning to you on your Thursday. It's October 17th, 2024. This is our ongoing series of political interviews, and joining us in the studio is Senator Dan Sullivan. He is the incumbent for that position and the Republican nominee for re-election. And of course, KLK and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. We do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. We provide these interviews for informational purposes, but early voting begins Monday, so make sure that you have yourself either at the election annex or the Lake City Courthouse. And of course, on election day, November 5th, you can vote at any polling place of your choosing. Not going to tell you who to vote for, but we definitely want you to make your voice known. All right, so with that being said, Senator, how you doing today?
I'm doing great, thank you.
Well, Senator, you don't really need much of an introduction, but I'm going to still ask you to kind of just, tell the listeners and viewers who may not be familiar with you, about yourself.
Well, I think you're right. Most people know me. They know my voting history. They know that I stand for families, stand for our community values, and do so strongly. Been a teacher 30 years in education in various forms, from elementary to high school to junior high and even higher ed. I worked in the private sector for about 12 years with children with multiple disabilities. We had 10 clinics around the state. We had about 300 or 400, 500 employees at times, and worked with anywhere from 500 to 700 or 800 children a day across our state. In that capacity, I started working with the legislative bodies on legislation, and from there became the political liaison of sorts for various organizations who advocated for children with disabilities. And from that, got involved in politics. I've been the state representative for 6 years, 3 terms, and now the senator for the past 4, and running for the next Senate position for 4 more years.
Okay, now let's kind of go into a little different direction. So you mentioned about being a state representative before being a state senator. So part one of this question is, what made you decide to even get into politics in the first place? And then part 2 is, what are some lessons from your term as a state representative that helped you as a state senator?
Sure, and what got me involved was the state government being overburdening in regulation. Way too many rules, making it hard for businesses to use the money to help the people. The money was used to promote bureaucracy. It was used to promote and empower government versus empowering the people. So I got involved in politics, lost my first round, and came back and ran for the House and won that race. The one thing you learn immediately, you can't do anything alone. There's 100 representatives, and if you're one of 100 and they need 51 to pass legislation or 51 to kill legislation, then you have to be able to work with people. If you start name calling, you start yelling at people, you learn really quickly that you can't gain a consensus. I also learned that there's not much power in the House. It's too easy for the majority to pigeonhole you even if you have a strong and you're a good position, it doesn't make any difference if you're right. What makes a difference is if you have the votes. And if you have the votes, you can do whatever you want, even things that aren't necessarily good. So as a senator, it's a smaller group of 35. The Senate is more conservative and was more conservative and more in line with what I believed. So I decided to run for the Senate, even though I was running against an incumbent who was supported by the current establishment and the current governor, ran against that, but had tremendous support from the people. And we won that race and have won it twice now. So I'm running for the third time in the Senate.
Okay, and if you do get reelected, would you be eligible for another term after that, or would that pretty much be it?
Well, yes, I'm eligible for another term. They don't, like the first term in the Senate, it was just a 2-year term because of the census. And so the 2 years didn't count against my total. And this, when I got reelected, I drew a 2-year term. So neither one of those count against I think it's 12 or 14 years total. So I would be eligible to run again if I so choose.
Okay. And what do you hope to accomplish in your remaining time in the legislature, whether it's this term that you're in, if you get reelected, and even if you get reelected beyond that?
Yeah, there's some big things going on. You know, I talked to one of our very influential member of our black community here in Jonesboro just a few minutes ago, and we talked about family values. My opponent runs, in my opinion, completely different from that. You know, we passed legislation to allow girls in girls sports, no biological boys in girls sports in our schools. She opposes that. We run against and passed legislation that prevented surgery. They call it care, but it removes the breast of women and the genitals of men and women. Gender affirming care, they call it. There's nothing gender affirming about it. About young children, even in elementary school, having access to explicit sexual material in the classroom in 3rd grade. Those are things that my opponent is running to stop, and legislation that I passed. You know, just recently, of course, Leganzi, the library has been a big point of contention.
Yep. And of course, it is on the ballot whether to restore the Jonesboro portion of the millage in which the voters voted to reduce in the last election.
Yeah, and of course, we asked, there's no plan. So I met with our librarian just the other day and asked her if the budget they have currently is sufficient. And the answer is yes. She would like to expand. All of us would like to expand. But, you know, they talked about losing 18 employees. Well, it's not 18 employees. It's actually, they had, I think, 12 or 13, but only a part of those were full-time employees. So it's actually like 5 or 6. And they have about $5 million in surplus. And about restoring the hours that they're open, it's only about 12 or 14 hours that they could restore. They have the money for that now. So my opponent has signed on to a additional tax, with no plan on how and what to do with that money. That's probably the biggest difference between us, is fiscal responsibility. And I don't think she has a plan. They talk about education, which is funded by property taxes. She thought and expressed an opinion from a question. She didn't even know how the schools were funded. When asked by a constituent why she lives in the town of Jonesboro, but pays property tax for her neighboring district, my opponent didn't even know that property taxes are collected by district, not community boundaries. So there's a tremendous difference in that.
Okay. And of course, we're going to continue to talk about, your views versus your opponent's view. But one thing I did want to kind of ask you about, because it actually hadn't really been brought up. So I'm actually looking at my potential ballot, and there are some constitutional amendments that are on the ballot. I just kind of wanted to get your thoughts on these amendments. So we'll start with issue 1. This is the said a constitutional amendment to provide that lottery proceeds may be used to fund or provide scholarships and grants to Arkansas citizens enrolled in vocational technical schools and technical institutes.
What a great question. And again, my opponent and I completely differ on this because the LEARNS Act, and let me say that again, the LEARNS Act is trying to blur the line between high school, career, and college. Blur the line means allowing for concurrent credit when you're in junior high or high school to work. And I'll give you another great example. I'm all for to answer your question, I'm all for issue 1. I was out at the Human Development Center the other day, and there are rules that are made that prevent a 17-year-old from working at the Human Development Center, but they can work at the hospital. And I asked in committee yesterday, why do we have that rule? And we're going to change the rule to allow 17-year-olds to work at the Human Development Center. So what does that mean for the issue 1 out here? That means that we can allow students to get credit while they work at human development centers and get paid. It's all about using scholarship money, state money, to allow those transfers. My opponent is against that.
Okay. And issue 2, it says an amendment requiring local voter approval in a countywide special election for certain new casino licenses and repealing authority to issue a casino license in Pope County, Arkansas.
Yeah, it's really confusing to a lot of people.
It really is. And it's also the one that seems to get the most attention. I've gotten mailers almost daily.
Yeah, well, first the answer is yes. Vote for local control. And that's essentially what this does. It allows the local county to say that we want or don't want a casino. Right now, the way state law is, the state, the other, I think, 77 counties in the state could say, we want to put a casino in Craighead County, and there's nothing we could do about it. In this ballot issue, it gives us the opportunity to say, we want or don't want one. And the bottom line is that vote yes on issue 2.
Okay. And let me see.
Issue 3 is marijuana.
Okay, let me read this. It says what popular name Arkansas Medical Marijuana Amendment 2024. I'm not going to read the whole thing. It's a book almost. But kind of tell us a little bit more about it and your stance on it.
Yeah, I'm a no on issue 3. And first of all, the Attorney General hasn't decided whether or not they have enough signatures to even count the votes. But as you said, it's a book-long description. But again, for me, the answer is no. We have medical marijuana is legal in Arkansas now. It's a good thing. People are benefiting from that, and I'm okay with that. This would expand the use of marijuana in the community, and I oppose that. It's already legal to the extent we need it.
All right. And, of course, the special election for the Craighead County jail tax.
Yeah, I'm. The state legislature passed legislation that says we're going to reduce or eliminate parole for people who commit violent offenders. For example, if you commit a felony with a firearm, you are no longer eligible for parole. Currently, you are. I voted for that. My opponent's party voted against it. The same thing for other violent criminal activities, to reduce and make it more difficult to get on parole and let violent offenders and repeat offenders into our community. I support those decisions. My opponent is against those. So what does that mean for the jail tax? That means in the jail, we're going to keep more people in jail longer. The court have ruled that once a jail reaches capacity, they have to start letting people out, regardless of how what their offense was. It's overcrowded. So we put the jail and our county judge in the position of saying, here's who we're going to release, even though they may be a multiple offender. Right now, our jail doesn't have the capacity. So I've tried to stay in my lane on this. I support and trust our judge and our sheriff and our chief of police. I trust them. Now, are there questions about the detail of how we're going to do it? Yes. Are those questions valid? Yes. If people want to oppose the tax because they want more information, okay, that's a valid point. Personally, I trust our judge and our sheriff and other law enforcement to make those right decisions. If you go out and talk to our parole officers, it's scary what they deal with. It's scary what our police deal with. You can look at Jonesboro right now and see violent offenders arrested and rearrested multiple times. And rather than keep them in jail, we're letting them out. And the question to me, Leganzi, is do we have accountability for what it costs to build a new jail? Absolutely. Do we deserve the details of what it cost? Absolutely. And I'm all for accountability. But there's accountability for letting violent criminals out also. And that means we're going to have violent offenders on our streets. And I oppose that. And if there's a cost to that or a trust factor to that, again, I trust the officials making those decisions. They've been in office 10 or 12 years. They've given me no reason not to trust them on this issue. And as you probably know, I think this is the first tax increase I've supported in my career.
Because I remember when this issue first came up, I remember on Conservative Corner, I asked Ms. Stevens, I said, conservatives, two things conservatives believe in is low taxes and law and order. You've got an issue where both of these converge, so where do you all stand? And at the time she said, well, we're still evaluating.
Yeah, and to me, people say, I don't trust government. Now, I don't either, I understand that. But government, when you get right down to it, is people. It's not that you trust an institution. You trust the people who are in power and are making those decisions. Personally, if the question is, do we need more detail? I say yes. Do we need accountability? I say yes. Do I trust the people who have demonstrated for the past decade that they've represented us well? The answer is yes.
Okay, and we've got about 8-9 minutes left, and I see that you have some notes here. So what are some other things or other issues that you kind of wanted to discuss?
Well, I think this election's huge. It is for the most important elected office in the state of Arkansas. And it relies on whether you can trust us or whether you can't. My opponent said she trusts parents. However, when it comes to how parents use their money in school, she doesn't trust them. She opposes the LEARNS Act vigorously. Folks, the LEARNS Act is one of the most important issues we have passed in years, and it changes the dynamic of the state. ASU, Arkansas State, is involved in development with our business and community, investing millions of dollars in steel industries. I think one of the important things also is, when you talk about trust, the Democrats ran an ad, and my opponent had it, that said, run like you're on the Daily Show and run just to be obnoxious and harass your opponent. That's what my opponent has done. The other one, I sent you, she called me a liar.
Well, I remember what you're holding up now, you held up at the KLEK and KASU debate.
Yeah, she's campaigning from her classroom. I can't campaign from the Senate headquarters or the Senate floor or my Senate office. There are rules about that. And when she takes the liberty of going into her classroom where I can't go, matter of fact, she's got a picture of her with the key. You can't get in there, but she's going to campaign from that. I think it speaks volumes about what our ethics are. I think that's an ethics violation. I haven't pursued it. I think she has, she said, I'm completely transparent. And she made that statement the other day. You've probably heard it. However, if you go on her website, she doesn't list the names of well over 100, almost 200 of her donors. She doesn't list their names. Now, one can say, I don't have to. Okay, that's valid. However, if you're 100% for transparency, you list the names of the people that donate to you. She doesn't do that. She calls me Book Ban Dan. You've heard that. Yet she can't find a book that has been banned in the state. There's no examples of that. So again, voters are going to vote for people they trust, voters who are out for them. And I think my tenure as a legislator You know I'm out for the people and our community.
All right, and of course, as we get ready to wind down, if you do get reelected, what are some of the bills that you hope to run?
Well, one, to treat all people equally. The bill failed narrowly last session, right before the Supreme Court ruled that we're going to treat all people fairly. One of our biggest businesses, Hytrol, the commissioner, when asked about DEI, said everybody's important for Hytrol. And the same thing at ASU. They just won an award because they treat everybody as a preferred person. We're going to run that bill again. I'll be on likely on the Education Committee, and we're going to promote LEARNs. Some of the issues you talked about earlier about giving students opportunities. And it doesn't make any difference whether you're black, white, green. My opponent had called me an old white male who doesn't understand his white privilege. That's not what we want in our legislature. And when I ran the bill, I sat down and spoke with the NAACP locally and statewide and other organizations, and the library met and actually changed the legislation with some of their suggestions. We can't be going around calling people names, book ban Dan, white man's privilege. It doesn't move our community forward. I've got a history of working with people, and I'll continue to do so.
All right, and of course, any final comments?
Listen, I appreciate what you do for our community. You have always pledged to be honest and open, nonpartisan. You've done that. I appreciate your willingness to bring me in, listen, and participate. You go everywhere.
Yeah. And Senator, I appreciate you because, to your credit, you were only one of two Republicans that actually responded to my inquiry. It was you and Representative Ladyman, who was my first guest. And of course, we definitely want to keep Representative Ladyman lifted up in prayer, as he did lose his wife. So whether you're going to vote for him or not, that's none of my concern. Definitely keep him lifted up in prayer. We've been speaking with Senator Dan Sullivan, and of course, KLK and the Voice of Arkansas Minority Advocacy Council. We do not endorse, support, or oppose any candidate for office. We do provide these interviews for informational purposes, but please exercise your right to vote. Early voting begins Monday, and you can vote at the Craighead County Election Annex on West Jefferson or the Lake City Courthouse. It's right off of the highway. And of course, on Election Day, you can vote at any polling location of your choosing. Of course, KLK will be live from the Election Annex on election night with the KLK election team, and we will bring you the results as they come in and as well as discuss the results. So it's always one of my favorite times of the year. All right, that's going to do it. But coming up at the bottom of the hour, we will have Misty Humway. She is running for Justice of the Peace. And of course, at 12:30, we will have representatives of Citizens for the Library. They're going to talk about their stance on the library tax. So don't go anywhere. We'll be back with more. This is KLK 102.5 FM. All right, Senator.
All right, thank you. Good job. So